Thank you, and thank you for taking time for joining my session today on Twinmotion. I know there's a lot of exciting Unreal Engine stuff going on, so thank you for coming to learn more about Twinmotion, or perhaps you're already an expert on Twinmotion. I will be doing a little bit of an introduction and then diving into some tips and tricks that can hopefully be helpful for those of you that may have already been diving into Twinmotion a bit. But if I haven't met you yet, I am Sam Anderson, and I am a technical marketing manager here at Epic Games. I get to produce content inside of Unreal Engine and Twinmotion and then share them with the world and be able to teach people. So I'm super excited to be here today. My background does come from an architecture side, so I was working at Shop Architects in New York, and I started diving into research and development, so creating virtual reality experiences, augmented reality experiences, diving into using Twinmotion on an Igloo 360 screen. And so it kind of led me here to where I am today. And so the project I'm showing you is an architecture project, but we are seeing creators of all kinds starting to use Twinmotion. So for automotive uses or product visualization, we've got quite a large audience out there using it. So I hope that if this is something that's new to you, I'd encourage you to check it out. So let's go ahead and dive in. So I will come here. Go to the next one. So if you are curious of what is Twinmotion, good question. We get that a lot. So as I said, it was based off of architecture in the very beginning. It was created by some architects in order to better be able to sell the stories of the designs that they are building. Now we are starting to see all creators use it, as I mentioned, and the whole idea of it is how can we make these game engines be as intuitive to our creators and users. So here you'll see that people are able to add in different content and quickly create different paths and create these experiences. So I'll dive into some of this today, but I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of a preview if you've never used Twinmotion or you're like, I've never heard of Twinmotion, what is it? I hope this kind of gives a precursor to what is possible with it. So let's see. In this talk, I will be using this asset here. So this is from a Revit project. So I'm going to be bringing in Revit. However, you can bring in a large array of different files and types. You can bring in FBX, things from SketchUp, Rhino. And the nice thing about Twinmotion is you can aggregate those similar to how you would in Unreal Engine. So this is what we're going to be working towards. I'll be flipping through a couple of different models, so you don't have to sit and watch me upload everything. But I will first start talking about the Datasmith direct link workflow. So if you are familiar with Unreal Engine, perhaps you've heard of Datasmith, I'll be diving into how the direct link works inside of Twinmotion. I'll then go into environment develop, so how can you start to build out your scene very quickly. I'll then go into storytelling, so how can you use some of the tools within Twinmotion that are created to be made very easy for creators. And then we'll talk about the deliverables and how you might start to share these projects with others. So as I mentioned, here are a few images from the project we're going to be working in. I'm going to do an intro to Twinmotion and then dive into the different media types. If you have any questions, I'm going to dive through this quickly, but at the very end, I'll save some time for questions. And I just ask that you come and speak into the microphone here at the middle of the aisle so that we can all hear you. And if I don't cover something that you have a question about, I will be working the Twinmotion booth in the expo hall today, so feel free to come say hello. I always love to see what everyone's working on and get to meet people. So please say hi. I'll be there. So let's go ahead and dive into the demo. So give me a moment to pull up all of the projects here, but I do want to note that the very first thing you're going to need to do is download the Datasmith plugin. So we have these plugins for Twinmotion. So you can access this by going to twinmotion.com/plugins. And here you are able to see some of the modeling solutions that we connect to. So for this project, I am going to be working with Revit. Now, one thing that you may notice different between some of these is that this one has direct link, whereas not all of them do. So we're continuing to work on our interoperability, but the stuff that I'm going to showcase today is going to be that direct link. So if you see your modeling solution here has that direct link, then the workflows will apply to that as well. So I have the Revit plugin downloaded, so I'm going to go ahead and open up here the project that we will be bringing in. So the first thing you'll need to do is make sure that you have a 3D view open. And when you have your Datasmith plugin downloaded, it's going to apply a new toolbar to the top. So you'll see we have this Datasmith toolbar. So I'm going to work through these different settings at the top, and then we'll go ahead and bring it into Twinmotion. So your first option here is the Datasmith export settings. So you'll see that you have the ability to control the level of tessellation. So this is set at 8 as default. So this is what we just recommend. You bring it in. You don't have to change it. But if you wanted to optimize your project a little bit before you brought it into the scene, you could lower that number to 4. So say you're working on a master plan and you don't need all of the detail in there. You can lower that number here so that it comes into the project already optimized a bit. Now, I would recommend if this is something that you are playing around with, do it at this part of the project. This is going to be the best part of the workflow to test that out at. Now, you will also have the ability to change the different metadata here. So you'll see this one has several different options here. If I wanted to add in a group, I could come in here, say I want to add area. I could select this little Boolean here, hit OK, and then it's going to bring that data into Twinmotion whenever I bring in the import. Now, if I wanted to remove any of these, I could do so by selecting this, hitting Remove Selected. And so it just gives me a little bit more greater control of curating the assets before I bring it in. Now, this Message tab is just going to let you know if there are any errors. So this is good for any troubleshooting. So say you bring something in, you're missing a JPEG or a material, you can go back to this Messages tab, and it's going to let you know where to look for that. Now, you'll see that here on the top left-hand side, we have 2 different options for actually bringing in the project into Twinmotion. So this first one is going to be File Export, which is going to export a standalone Datasmith file. So this can be great if you're working with a team and they're working inside of Twinmotion or Unreal Engine, and perhaps they don't have Revit on their computer. You can export this standalone, send it to them, and then whenever you make changes, you can just re-export another one with the same name, and they'll be able to update it on their end. But say that you are the person working in Twinmotion and in Revit, and you want to have both of them on your computer at the same time, then you can use Direct Link, which is going to allow you to synchronize changes. So anytime you make a change, you'll be able to hit Synchronize here, and that change will come into Twinmotion. So let's go ahead and bring up Twinmotion. So we need to establish the connection in order for it to work. So I'll open up Twinmotion here. If you've never opened up Twinmotion, that's totally fine. It's on the Epic Games launcher, so if you're curious about it, I'd say go ahead, download it, test it out. For anyone who is brand new, I'll just do a very quick UI overview. So the project will pop up with this ground floor plane and this background as is. And on the left-hand side, this is going to be our library. So these are all the different assets that we can bring inside of Twinmotion. And I'll go over a few of these as I talk about the media. But I do want to point out that we also have Quixel Megascans and Sketchfab here. So those are part of the Epic Games ecosystem. I'll be diving more into that later. And I also have a class tomorrow. If you want to be a little bit more hands-on and try these out, feel free to join that class, and I can talk you through all the ways that you can use those. So on the bottom here, this is going to be similar to your content browser if you're working in Unreal Engine. This is where you will bring in your projects and then fully develop the settings and different media tabs for you. Now on the right-hand side, we have our scene graph. So this is going to be similar to your outliner inside of Unreal. So we'll take a look at this in a moment once I've brought in the project. But to bring in that project, I'm going to go down here to where it has the plus sign for import. And you'll see that there's 4 different options here. So we have the geometry. If I wanted to bring in any FBXs or OBJs, I could do so here. But I'm going to be working with this direct link. And I just want to point out, you also have the ability to do landscape or point clouds as well. So I'll be using this direct link. And so you'll see that it automatically recognizes the Revit file that's open on my computer. So if I hit options here, it's going to allow me to have a few different ways of bringing in that object or model. So here I have collapse by material, which is what I'm going to use because it's going to optimize it just a little bit. So it's going to merge those materials so I can easily apply new materials inside of Twinmotion. So I'll go ahead and select import here. And you'll see that it pops up here in the content browser. But if I look around, it is nowhere to be found, and that's because we need to hit synchronize on the Revit model. So I'll go ahead and go back to the Revit model, hit synchronize, and you'll see a little progress bar pop up on the bottom left here. So this is just letting you know that it's working, it's letting you know the status of that. And then whenever you go back into Twinmotion, it will pop up with a window letting you know that it's coming in. So it may take a little bit of time depending on how large your project is. But one thing that I didn't talk about that I want to just bring to your attention is that you do have the ability to enable substitution while you're working. So say you are using Twinmotion a lot, you have your favorite assets that you like to use, and you want to speed up that process, you could create a CSV file that allows you to do that substitution with the import. So this can be very helpful for when you're working with teams. You could have that CSV table ready to go, and then anyone who brings in models could use that table. So I won't be diving into that for this demo, but we do have videos on it if you'd like to learn how it works on our Twinmotion YouTube page. So I'd encourage you to check that out. That's where we put a lot of our demo videos there. So you will see that we have the material in now, or I'm sorry, the model. The model is in here. And you'll see that some materials have been brought in with it. And so in order to check out some of those materials, I'm going to hit this material picker here. And then I'm going to select one of the geometries. And you'll see that it comes in with this light gray steel. Now, if I wanted to check out some of the other materials that are in the project, I can hit this material toggle button here, which is going to show me all of the different materials inside of the project. So you'll see that the Revit materials came in. If I wanted to make changes to them, I could select this geometry. And then I could start to play around with some of the reflection, maybe darken it a bit. I could add a bump map to it. So all of those settings are going to be here. Now, if I wanted to create a new material, I could do so by hitting plus here. And then I could rename this to custom. Perfect. And then I could start to bring in a JPEG if I wanted to. So if I hit more here, you'll see that I have access to bring in files for that material. So as far as applying the materials, it can just be a drag and drop. But if I wanted to just use the native Twinmotion materials without creating my own, I can do so by going over to the library here on the left-hand side. And I can go up to the top materials here. So say I just want to bring in a metal that is native to Twinmotion. I can drag and drop that in, change maybe some of the reflection here, edit this. So I just am bringing this up that there's a lot of different workflows of working with your CAD models inside of Twinmotion. So we have the native library, we have the Revit materials that you could use. You could create your own materials if you wanted to. But we also have the ability to use the Quixel surfaces. So if you're not, I'm guessing many of you may be familiar with Megascans and Quixel just through the association with Unreal Engine. But it is a part of the Epic ecosystem, and so we want to make it easy for creators to have access to that. So in Unreal Engine, you might use the bridge, but here it's just embedded inside the library. So I can go over to the Quixel Megascans here, go to Surfaces, and then I could go into Metal and take a look at some of the options here. So let's go ahead. I'll just bring one of these in. Now this is going to be a little bit different of a workflow than the Quixel bridge in Unreal Engine. And it's because you'll see that we have this little download button here. So it's saying you need to please sign in to download, and that's just because you need to have the Epic Games email or account in order to use some of these assets. So in order to get that, I'm going to go to File, sign into Epic Games. If you've already signed in once, you don't have to go through the whole process, so you'll see I can just hit OK here, and then I can download this. Now, this is going to be dependent on your internet speed, so maybe super fast if you have great internet. If not, once you download it once, you don't have to keep on downloading it. So it's just adding it to your library so that you can use it in the future without having to download all of the Quixel assets at once. So not only do we have the materials for this, but we also have all of the 3D assets that come with Bridge as well. So 3D plans, and any kind of props we have here as well. So I am, at this point, going to switch over to a model that has more Revit files brought in, and then I'm going to start working through some of the context and environment building. So I'll go ahead and close out of this. We won't save. And then I'm going to open this up here. So this project here has obviously more geometry in it, and you can see that I've brought in multiple Revit files here. However, you could bring in one Revit file that has multiple Revit files linked. So it just depends on how you like to work and how you like to bring in your projects. So here you see that we have some materials applied, but I want to start to add in some landscape and foliage. So I'm going to work down this bottom dock here, and so the second one is going to be our context tab. So here, I'll start to bring in some trees. So I'm going to go over to this vegetation paint, select that. I'll drag and drop these trees in, hit this paintbrush, and then now I can just start painting in. So it's going to be similar to the foliage tool in Unreal Engine. So I can just paint a few more in. And then now I can control the settings for these trees individually if I wanted to. So if I wanted to change the color of one, I could select one, or I could do both of them at the same time. And then I'll go to settings here, and I could change the age of them. Perhaps let's darken the bark a little bit here. So there we go. And so this allows you to create different types of trees. You can bring in multiple ones later if you want to, so it gives you some flexibility on how you're working with those trees. Now I am going to go ahead and add another vegetation in here. So let's do grass this time. So I'm going to go back to the vegetation option here, go down to grass. I'm going to drag and drop this grass in, and then I'm going to start painting this. So now we've got a little bit of painted grass in here. Now one thing you may notice is that we can see it here in the foreground, but not in the background. And that's just the way that we have Twinmotion set up, so that we are optimizing the backend so that you can work very easily. So similar to using LODs or level of details, you have the ability to change the way that you work with this grass. So in order to show that, I'm going to go up to Edit here, go to Preferences, and then here we have a lot of different settings that you can control. So I'm just bringing this up as if you are a Twinmotion user, you've been a user for years and haven't visited the preference in a while, check it out. We're adding some new features to it, so I encourage you to take a look at it and see some of the new things that we've been adding. But this grass fading has been there for a while, but pretty much I can change the way that I view the grass here. So I'm going to put near so that I'm only seeing the stuff in the front, and the stuff in the back is going to go away. However, when I go to render, everything is going to render completely there. Now, one fun thing, or not fun, it's just, I do want to showcase this, because if you are working in Revit, you do have the ability to change your appearance. So with the color interface, if I wanted to, I could change this to light. I'll hit OK. So if you're wanting to work with Revit and this at the same time, you could do this. However, I'm not used to working like this, so I'm going to go ahead and go back. But I did want to showcase that, because I do know that that has been a request from some of our users. So I'll go back to the dark here, and I'm going to go back to that context tab, and I'm going to bring in another type of path, or another type of context building tool. So I'm going to use the path for this one. So you'll see you have the ability to use character path, vehicle path, bike, and create your own custom ones. So for this one, I'll do character path. I'm going to hit this pen here, and then I'm going to just start creating this spline. So I'll bring this in, right-click on my mouse, and then it will start to populate with people here. And we could change some of the clothing of the characters, the width, the density. So this allows me to quickly create imagery here. So this is great if you're doing any kind of previs or any type of competitions and you just want to quickly get some ideas out. I'd say this is a great tool to use in order to quickly build out your scene. So now I'm going to go ahead and switch over to a project that's a little bit more built out, and I'm going to start diving into the media so that we can take a look at what some of the settings are for media and be able to edit those within that. So I'll go ahead and close out of this one, and I will open up here. Okay, so for this project, we have it a little bit more built out. We've got trees, we've got some grass, we even have some animated videos in. And then I am going to walk through these, you'll see that this Settings tab I don't have access to, and that's because I'm in the Media tab. If I wanted to, I could quit the Media mode and then go over to Settings. And this is going to be where I can control the weather, the lighting, the location, but I'm going to be doing that for each of the media I create. So I'll be covering a lot of these inside of the media. There's a lot there, so I won't be able to dive into too much, but I just want to let you know that you have complete control, similar to post-process volume, here in Twinmotion. So now I'll go over to the Media tab, go back to Image, and I'm going to start going through some of these images here. So you may notice that this one is looking a little bit different. It's got the progressive rendering. And one of the nice things about Twinmotion is that because it is built using Unreal Engine, we are able to take advantage of some of the features that are inside of Unreal Engine. So for this one, we are utilizing the path tracer. So if you have a graphics card that is DirectX 12 enabled, you'll be able to take advantage of this technology. Now what's nice is you could fully develop your project using real-time rendering and then just switch over to this by just hitting this toggle button here. So you'll see if I hit this drop down, I have control over how many samples per pixel that I want to converge the rendering to. So I could go down to medium here, and it's going to move much quicker. So this is extremely nice of just taking your projects to the next level. It's going to give you a little bit more ambient occlusion, better reflections and refractions. So if you do have the graphics card that allows you to do this, I encourage you to check it out. Now you also have the ability to do diagrams. So here, for instance, if you wanted to create a diagram or storytelling of how one would build a project, you have the ability to get pretty creative with your images here. But for now, I'm going to showcase this vignette here. So we have a little office scene here, and I'm going to play around with some of the features inside of here and then add a few things in the library. So say that I want to have a specific asset that I'm not finding in our library. So everything you're seeing here is in our Twinmotion library. But say I want to add in something different. We now have integration with Sketchfab, where you are able to browse the Sketchfab library for the CC attribution and be able to bring in your assets from Sketchfab. So if I select this little jog here, you can see that we have the creator's name, the size of it, how we should be crediting the information, and we'll be able to download it and drop that in. So I've gone ahead and downloaded a hacky sack. I don't know why. I was browsing, saw this, and was like, let's add in this. So I'm going to go back to my Sketchfab library. So here we go, Sketchfab. There we go. So I've already downloaded this here, but I can drag and drop it into my scene. So once again, you won't have to do that object creation every time. If you download it once, you could add it to your user library, and it'll be much easier to bring in the future. But for now, I have it placed into my scene. And what I'm going to do is show a couple of ways that you can place it within your project. So I'm going to go over to the scene graph on the right-hand side. And if you have your object selected and hit Shift on your keyboard, you can hit anywhere in the object, and it's going to place it there. So this is something that I honestly didn't know for a very long time, and it's been very helpful for building out the project. So you can do that, but we also have some new features that enable gravity. And so in order to showcase that, I am going to make a few copies of this hacky sack here. So I'll go over to Instance. I'll hit 3. Now I'll make sure all are selected. I'm going to go over to this middle part of the dock here. And these are all of our transform tools. So you'll see that there are 2 different ones here. These are in early access, so it may not give you the result that you want, but it is very fun to try. So if I hit this gravity early access, you'll see that they all fall down. Now, if I didn't like that, I could always hit Control-Z to go back. And one of the nice things about this is it's creating a collision mesh. It's a convex collision mesh around that object. And it's applying collision meshes to all of the objects in the scene so that you are able to better place assets inside of Twinmotion. So I'll just go ahead and move this around a little bit more. I'll do it one more time to see if we can get a nice result. So I know if you are placing different elements in the scene, like fruit or anything, that can be very helpful. So I'll remove some of these here. And then I'm going to showcase one more option that you can do. So this is going to be the move with collision. So when I have this selected and drag it down, you'll see that it stops at that table there. So it's recognizing the collision mesh and saying, hey, go no more. So that can be very helpful if you're looking at more vertical elements. So if you wanted to put a frame on a wall, you could use this in order to place it. I don't know how many times I've zoomed in, had to place something on a table here. But so I just wanted to kind of cover some of the different library aspects inside of this image, the still image. But now I'm going to go ahead and move on to some of the other media options we have. So if I go to media, you'll see we also have panoramas. So this is going to be similar of how you can create different panorama sets. So I'll dive into that in a moment. But we also have videos for you as well. So here you'll see that I have a video sun study set. So you'll see that it's just tracking the way that the sun moves throughout the space. So if we wanted to create our own, we could go over and hit create video. And it's going to create a frame of the camera in my viewport. If I wanted to move this around, say, zoom in a bit, I could hit the refresh button here. And then I can create a new frame by hitting the plus button. And it's going to give me options to control the settings for each individual frame or the video as a whole. So anyone who's familiar with Sequencer, this is going to be a little bit different or a little bit more dialed down for you. So just enable you to quickly create animations. So if I wanted to change the settings for all of the animation, I could select settings here. But if I wanted to do individual, I could go over to more. Oh, sorry. I'll select the camera first. Then we can go to more. And then I can start to change some of the lighting settings within here. So in order to animate that moving sun, what I've done is I've gone over to the lighting. And you'll see that we have the environment skylight here. So when I go ahead and click on that, we have a couple of different things that you can use. We have dynamic sky, an HDRI, and a backdrop HDRI. So with the newest release of Twinmotion, we do have a catalog of sky HDRIs that you can bring in. So this one is using this skylight HDRI. So I'll go ahead and hit more. And you'll see we have one that's just native inside of Twinmotion. But if you wanted to bring in your own, you could do so, or you could use one of ours that we have here. So we have hundreds of HDRIs that you can download and use similar to the Quixel and Sketchfab assets. So in order for this to animate, I'm actually going to just go ahead and change the rotation. So we'll keep it pretty simple. I'll change the rotation here. And that's all I have to do. It's just going to save that setting. I could change the length here, so I'll hit 5. And then I can hit play. So now we have our animation, pretty quick to create. So you could do this for a lot of different elements. If you wanted to get a little bit more creative with some of the animation objects, we do have some additional tools here, such as animators. So we have rotators and translators that you can apply to your scene graph so that it has a parent-child relationship, and you can edit inside of Twinmotion. So now I'll go ahead and continue working through some of the different media options here. So you'll see that we have phasing. So for phasing, if I select this, I could create a new phasing group. And here I can add in as many phases as I wanted to. I could overlap some of these. So you'll see that this is set up to be a timeline with different months. However, it doesn't have to be. It can just be a way that you start to animate and build out your project. So essentially what each of these phases is doing is it's saving the scene hierarchy visibility here. So if I wanted to, for instance, have these lights turn on at the very end, what I could do is I could turn them off for this one. And then for all of these, they will stay turned on. So I'm going to go ahead and just showcase that a little bit better here. I'm going to change the material to a brighter material. So I'll go into neons, drop in. Ooh, that's a little too bright. There we go. Okay, so now I have a new material for it. I'll go over to the phasing tab, go into this group, and now as I click through the phases, we gotta turn this one off for these. Let's do that. So we'll save that information, and now as I'm going through, you'll see that it turns on for the last one. So you could go through and start to story tell your project in a way that perhaps you want to show the construction of a building being made. You could start with the slabs, the foundation, then on another phase you could have the structure going up, the next phase the facade, the next phase the interior. So you could start to curate your project, and then you'll be able to apply the phasing groups to your videos. So in order to do that, you could go over to Video, go to More, and then you could select a phasing group here. Now I'm going to go back into that Media tab, and I'll talk through these other two here. So this is Presentation and Panorama Set. So you do have the ability to create a standalone EXE that you could send to someone, and they could completely walk through your project. However, we know that not everyone has game-specified computers to use, and not everyone will have great graphics card. So we wanted to be able to make it easier for you to share some of your projects. So we have Twinmotion Cloud, which you have access to with your Epic Games account, which allows you to send your project to Twinmotion Cloud and then share that with anyone, and they'll be able to open it up on their phone, on their tablet, on their laptop, whatever they want to open it up. As long as they have browser access, then they're good. Now, there may be cases in which you don't want someone to be fully walking around your project. If you are a designer and architect and you haven't designed the back of house, maybe you don't want someone going into, I don't know, laundry closet or something you haven't even touched yet. So we do have the ability to do panorama sets. So this is going to allow you to curate the way that one moves throughout the space. So you could create different hotspots throughout your project, and then the person will be able to jump from place to place. So in order to showcase that, I have created some panoramas here. So I'm gonna just select this. And you may notice this looks a little bit different. So I do have a visual effect applied on top of this. So as you are developing and working, you might be adding in materials so that you understand how the design is going to look, but perhaps you don't want to share that with the client just yet. You do have the ability to change the filter for this by going over to More, going to Camera, Visual Effects, and then here under Filters, we have a couple of different types. So I am using this hidden line here, which is just a nice way of showing a more tune effect for your image. So I'll keep it at hidden line here, and then we can go down to the bottom and take a look at how we could actually push this to the cloud. So here under Export, you'll see we have images, panorama, videos. Now you could do batch renderings with these, so if you wanted to create a bunch of different images and you're changing the design and want to export it all at one time, you do have the ability to do that. But for this, I'll go ahead and hit empty here, and I'm gonna go over to the panorama set, turn this on, and then I'll hit start export. So this is going to render it on my computer and then send it to the cloud. Now, once you get to the cloud, this once again all depends on your internet speed and your computer. And so I'm actually gonna go ahead and jump into and show you what it looks like once it does go live. So I believe, oh, it's no longer there. Let me go ahead and cancel this. If you wanted to just access your Twinmotion Cloud to see what it looks like, you can do so by going to File, making sure you're signed in, and then opening up Twinmotion Cloud. So here, let's take a look at our browser. This is what the Twinmotion Cloud looks like. We have all of my projects here, so I am playing around with this sketch panoramas. Now here on the right-hand side, you see that we have the ability to create a password for it. So perhaps you're working on an NDA project, you don't want it to share with everyone quite yet. You can enable that password and then share that password link with someone. And then you could also create a QR code. So perhaps you want to just be able to put a QR code up on the screen and have people be able to open up your project on your mobile phone. You could do so. And then lastly, we have the new embed code option. So if you're creating a website and want to have the ability for people to see the project or the visuals that you're doing, you can copy this code, put it on your website, and then people will have access to it. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the scene here. So it may take a moment. And what's nice about this is that you are able to share it with many different people all at the same time. I think it's really improved the way that we are able to communicate our visions. I know in the past I'd have to take a gaming computer with the headsets, and it was a whole setup that was very stressful and took a lot of time. So this makes things a lot easier. It's going to pop up with instructions on how to actually use the experience. So you can click through here, but I'll go ahead and close out of that, and you'll see that we have access to our project on the cloud. So if I come over to this side, the Open Media strip, I can jump in between each of these different panoramas. And then there are also hotspots, so if I wanted to just click in within the project, I could do so as well. So once again, this is the panorama set. We also have the presentation mode, which is going to allow you to more freely move throughout the space, but I won't be showcasing that. I'm gonna go ahead and jump back into the Twinmotion project though, and talk a little bit about what could be next for you and your project. So taking it to the next level, I do think being able to use that path tracer is really going to improve the options or the fidelity of your project. So here we have the samples per pixel. So if you've already started playing around with Twinmotion, I like to work with this at a lower number, so I might set it at 512, and then whenever I do the export, I might bump it up. Now, one of the new things with Twinmotion is we've actually increased the size of the exports. So you can go up to 8K and 16K for your exports. So if you wanted to, I don't know, print this out on scaffolding or construction base, you can do so. You are going to have the ability to really use that high resolution rendering. Now you also have the ability to control some of the path tracer here. So I might lower some of the bounces. You can pick if you'd like to choose or use the denoiser. And then the alias filtering is going to help with the sharpness of the image. So I won't play around with this too much, but we do have a lot of features that are embedded inside of Twinmotion that are going to take it to the next level. But if it's just not enough for you, we always have the ability to take it into Unreal Engine. So there are 2 plugins that allow you to do this. It's going to be the Twinmotion content for Unreal Engine and then the Datasmith importer for Twinmotion. So tomorrow in my class, if you're interested in this, I'm actually going to take one of the models from Twinmotion and bring it into Unreal Engine. And if you're wondering why would you need to bring it into Unreal Engine, you know, Twinmotion can be great if you need to create visuals, be able to share on the cloud, or create simple animations. Twinmotion is going to be a wonderful tool for you. It's very easy to use. It's very fun as well. But perhaps you want to make more virtual reality experiences or augmented reality experiences, or perhaps create a custom app that one might use. You could then take it into Unreal Engine. Now, one thing I do want to showcase that we have a little bit of time, and then I'll go to some questions, is I do want to showcase some of the magic with Twinmotion of, you know, really being able to sell the story. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into this exterior image. I'm going to go into one of these characters here. And I'm going to take a look at some of the settings that we have for some of the weather. So I didn't cover this, so let me just this is a big column here. This is nice. Nice cantilever. Okay, so I'm going to create an image here, and then I'll go over to more. And if I go to weather here, we have the ability to quickly apply some different particles here. So you'll see that I can make it rain. I can make it snow here if I wanted to. So I know that this could take quite a bit of time to create inside of Unreal Engine. So it's nice being able to just quickly move the sliders in order to create these different elements. I could create a different season, create different images with each of these settings. So I don't have to have different levels. I can all do it within my own Twinmotion project. If I wanted to, I can increase the smog here, the direction of the wind. So just kind of some fun things that are embedded that make storytelling a little bit easier. So that's our whole goal. How can we help you bring your visions to life, or I guess into 3D life? That's our whole goal, and so we hope that Twinmotion is helpful for that. If you're curious and just want to play around with this, please feel free to stop by our booth in the expo hall. I'll be there with some of my colleagues. We have some Twinmotion cloud experiences that you can check out. We have some models that you can check out as well. So yeah, I'd say please stop by and say hello.